But it was finally my time to do something for me, which I hadn't done in that way ever, because being a mom, being a wife, and I love all of that, don't ever get me wrong, but I never made time for myself.
Hello and welcome to the Disrupt the Everyday podcast. We're here to help you navigate life while disrupting the status quo. Our discussions cover a number of topics relevant to everyday life. We discuss everything from relationships to entrepreneurship. We also engage in some difficult but important conversations. And now, here are your hosts, Brian and Tanya Hamilton.
Welcome to episode 11 of Disrupt the Everyday podcast. Today we're joined by Denise Drinkwalter, and we're going to be discussing the relationship between parents and adult children. Denise, thanks for joining us today.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for asking me.
Oh, thank you so much for accepting. We'll start off first with the profound question. Who is Denise Drinkwalter?
What a great question. How long do we have for this podcast? I just need to clarify.
Take your time.
I'll make it short and sweet. I am a mother of three, wife of an amazing husband, and we've been married since 1988. And I have two grandsons, and I have recently retired in 2018 from an incredible 31-year career as an educator. Through my career in education, I was a behavior resource teacher. I was a primary education teacher. So I taught from kindergarten to grade 6 when I first started. And then I went into the behavior resource teacher role, which I absolutely loved. Special education was my thing. And after that, I then became an administrator. So I retired out as an administrator from a K-6 school in Ontario, Canada, where I'm from. And I have been an empowerment life coach for women in midlife years since 2018. And the reason why I became a coach was because of the number of women that I meet who struggle with transitions in life. It's almost like all of a sudden you wake up and everything around you is changing and you haven't even realized that this was starting to happen until you're in the middle of it. And then I've talked to so many women who realize there's something more, something's missing, but they don't know what it is. It's also something that people don't really talk a lot about because your life should be good, right? You've got the husband, you've got the 3 children, you've got grandchildren, you've got cars, you've got a house, you've got everything you need. So there really shouldn't be any reason for you to be stressed or worried, but it is part of what happens as a woman in your midlife years. So going through some of that stuff myself, I feel that I have an opportunity to help other women go through what they're going through. And I've, based on the fact that I was an educator and I was what I would call a very good listener, I have the propensity to take the information in of the struggles and stressors that women share with me, and then we create a plan of action to help them through. So that's who I am in a nutshell. I know that's fairly long-winded, but it gives you where I started and where I am now and why I do what I do.
That's not long-winded at all. We've had much longer answers to that question. So it's not an easy one to answer.
So tonight we want to focus on parenting adult children as the new phase of parenthood. So like you said, it's not something, this age group, I guess you can say, it's not really something that is discussed a lot because, we're at the end of being the adult children. You're at the grandma, and all that right now, right? But I'm reading books on toddlers and, now kids in grade school and all that kind of stuff. And you're so immersed in that. So yeah, like I can't even think, 10 years from now, what I would be reading, right? Because you would hope that things are going okay. So it was really interesting to me. I thought this is going to be a neat topic to discuss, right? Because that's where the focus should be. So parenting adult children, it's one of the most difficult yet least discussed life transitions facing adults today. That's what I saw on your blog. So can you talk to us, I guess, about how you find the relationships change between adult children and their parents?
Now, and before you do that, you had said we're at the end of being adult children. Is there something I should know?
Sorry.
Perspective, right? It's all about perspective, friend.
Oh man.
You guys are going to have a great conversation following our podcast. It's a great question because like I mentioned in my startup, where it's like all of a sudden your children are grown up and people are like, okay, now what do I do? So the college life, the university life, the work life, they move out, right? And then the parents are like, well, I can tell you kind of what happened for us. Paul and I looked at each other and we were like, well, we have two choices here. One, we can decide to become couch potatoes, get the bag of chips out whenever we want and have that Coke because we can, or we can start to look after ourselves. So we chose the latter. We decided to start to look after ourselves. So we joined a gym and learned how to look after ourselves physically. And that became a great segue for us. What happened from there, though, was that I got a little more involved because of my retirement. I was like, Paul can't do it at the same time I am now because he's at work. So I'm going to come up with something else. And I decided run. I hated running. Oh my God, you guys, what do you call it? I was the water girl for the cross country team because my husband was one of the runners. So I wanted to go in the bus with them. So I was the helper, but there was no way I was running. So I decided to take up running because I thought it's something that I can do by myself and see if I could do it. So I was kind of doing it to push myself to see what I was capable of. But the learning that happened through that process was mind-blowing for me. And what happened was all of a sudden, like I entered a race. I went to the Niagara Falls race and I ran I think the first race I ever did was a 10K and I did it. I went and I had tears in my eyes because my daughter and son-in-law who were in the area, like where we live 2 hours away, but close enough to be able to come, surprised me and showed up to watch me run this race. And I was in tears. I'm like, what are you doing here? I'm doing this for me. And Paul came to cheer me on. They said, we are so proud of you doing this. We want to show our grandchildren what your grandma can do. And that was like, I didn't do it for anybody else but myself. And once I realized the power of me doing something for me, what happened around me was nothing I could have ever created. So the people that love me stepped up in ways that I never knew would have ever happened. Like I couldn't have created something like that, even if I read every book possible and, but it was finally my time to do something for me, which I hadn't done in that way ever, because being a mom, being a wife, and I love all of that, don't ever get me wrong, but I never made time for myself. And that's what happens. The kids left. And now what I'm finding is the women that I'm working with are finding the same thing. The kids are grown up. Now they don't have anybody to look after. So they do one of two things. They might start to figure out what they want to do for themselves, or they might begin to interject themselves back into their children's lives. And things are being done differently. And so it can become quite a difficult situation when you don't do it the way I would have done it, or what do you think? And all the personalities that have to happen in order for the growth to happen for that family unit. And when mom or mother-in-law comes, the mother-in-law jokes, right? They surface from somewhere. Let's not kid ourselves, right? So when you have a relationship with yourself and you're happy and love who you are as an individual, your relationships with your children, with your significant other, with anybody is going to be that much better and stronger because you know who you are. You don't have to fill a void by going and doing things and interfering with other people's lives. You can just do it because it's good for you, right?
Mhm.
So there's so many pieces to it, right? Even thinking about the way you were brought up. Like when I think about my parents and what they did for me and how they created an environment for me, and I'm grateful because I had a wonderful upbringing. But there are pieces of that that I didn't use as a parent because it wasn't who I was. But every once in a while, little things slip out, and you're like, I thought I'd never say that. That sounds like, right? You guys are
Oh,
laughing because
yes.
you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, 100%.
So, and it's not a bad thing, but it's one of those things you say, well, I'm not going to do that. But there are certain things that just happen because it's the way you were raised. That's what you heard. That's how it rolled, whatever. And once you know who you are as a woman, then your relationship with your adult children can be so much more powerful, enlightening, and mature, right? There's that potential to have that maturity and that well-rounded relationship where you can have honest, open discussions and what each other really needs, and when to step back, and when you're needed, and that you're capable of having an opportunity where if there's a need that you need to help fulfill, if it's something that you are not able to do or you can't do because you know who you are as a woman and a mom, then you have the ability to say, you know what? I can't do that. That would not be best for me. That would not be best for you. But if you don't have that capacity to be able to share that, then what can happen is you go in and try and do it, and then things can go south really fast, right? And those are the hard times. Those are the extra. I mean, life is hard enough, right? So to run around and try and fix everything else in between. And if you don't know who you are, then those are the types of things you'll want to do because that will fulfill you. But if you fulfill yourself from the inside out, then you can provide support differently. And it doesn't have to come from a need of yours. It can come from a support as a mom, right? Which is very different.
Mhm. I do see that. And I mean, like, obviously, I have, different friends, different circles, and you see how some parents do things, right? Or, there's that grandma who just shows up randomly. And, that can be overbearing. And then as you were talking, I'm thinking, you know, is, is that because she's trying to fill a void and isn't filling it with, I guess, other things or activities that would also bring joy? Because you hear people say, oh well, my grandkids are my, like, pride and joy, right? Yes, but they're, like you're saying, there's so much more to that, and not having those boundaries in place can actually, as we see from different situations, can backfire, right? And then there's resentment and all that comes with it.
Absolutely. And then that's where relationships can break down, right? And the other piece that I find can be really challenging is the lack of communication, right? Which is a huge thing. And that's hard because if you're not used to communicating, then you need to create some kind of strategy where that's going to have to happen in a safe and supportive way. But again, it depends on each of the individual players, right? And when you become a family unit, so my daughter and my son-in-law, you know, have a wonderful relationship. Everything is great. We communicate, I believe, quite well. I would say they'd say the same thing. I mean, I look after the grandsons every day, 5 days a week. I love it. But when it's time to go home, they go home. I have my like we've set up a strategy that works for everybody. And if it isn't working, we need to have conversation. But we're both available for that, right? So those are the pieces that are really important. And because everybody has a heart and their hearts are tied to it, it becomes complex, right? It can become really complex. And I think that's why people think, oh, I think this is going on. But if you don't have the conversation about what is really happening, then you're going to create all these stories and they might not be accurate, right? And it might be a need for that lady that you spoke about, that you're thinking about, that it might be a need for her to have more connection with her grandchildren. But why is that need there, right? It's interesting. I put out a little question, not that long ago, just asking basically, do you wish your children were adult or young again? And then very interesting responses, right? Very
So
interesting.
what was it? They rather their children
It was
all over?
I had one that said, nope, done with that. I'm done with that. No way, right? And then I had other women who say, oh, I miss it so much. It was so awesome, right? And so, as a person who's reading it, I can create all kinds of stories, right? But I don't know. It's wonder what it triggered for them, really, is what I was trying to get them to do, is trigger an emotion to see their connection with their children. And if you went to their younger years, then maybe you had a great opportunity then. Like, there's so many variables that can go into that, as of course, but the fact that people even responded was very good, because it made me feel like that's good that they were happy years, or nope, that was too much work, whatever. It was just a great big nope. Don't want to go back there. But I mean, I remember, talking to parents even when I was in and running the kids around, right? Oh, can we get out of this stage? Can we get out of this stage, right? And now I look at things and go, wow, if I had have known back then what I know now, I would have taken every moment and opportunity that was in front of me to just be in the moment, because you just never know what is going to happen tomorrow to any of us, right?
Yeah.
So just if we could teach ourselves to love the moments we are in and the moments that we get. And if they're tough moments, then what's the learning from it, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, there's a couple of things there. You talked about having an effective strategy. And I think, speaking as someone who has younger kids, I think a strategy of having my mother-in-law watch my kids 5 days a week would definitely be a strategy that works. So that's a great starting point right there. But the other thing too, that you made me think of is a statistic I heard, and I don't remember the statistic exactly, but the majority of divorces, or a large portion of divorces anyways, happen in the first 2 years of marriage if there are no kids, or in the 2 years following the last kid leaving the home. I see you nodding your head, so I'm assuming that's something that you've seen as well.
Well, it's interesting that you say that stat. I'm not surprised by it at all. But think about those times, right? Think
Right.
about what's going on during those times. They're high stress times. The latter being a time where, again, I kind of talked about it, where all of a sudden there's two people alone where they haven't been alone for however many years. So who the hell are you? Because they're going through transitions as well as you. Like, everybody's going through it. And it's taboo. It's not as taboo as it used to be, but menopause, people think of menopause as the first thing when you think midlife years, right? That's a tip of the iceberg. That is a tip of the iceberg. And I'm not here to frighten anybody, because let me tell you, midlife years are amazing. You can make any age amazing. You should, because you have the opportunity to do that, right? But in order for you to understand, in order for people to understand, I think the important piece is midlife years provides an opportunity for everybody to step back and in. So get back out of the hurry and hustle and bustle that's kept you alive this long. But now you've got an opportunity to step in. And that's the scary part. So people are thinking, oh, if I change my environment, I'm going to get that vim and vigor that I once used to have, right? But when you go and change your environment, or you start thinking about separation or divorce, you have to do that with such deep consideration. And there's so many pieces to it, And I actually was asked to create a course, and I did create a course for women in their midlife years. And it's a course for a lady called Ravit Rose, and it's called Divorce by Rose.
Yeah, we're gonna have her on.
Are you?
Yeah.
Oh, amazing. Oh, she's perfect. I'm so excited to hear that. So the course that I created does just that. It's for women 50 plus years of age who are contemplating separation and or divorce. And when you are thinking like that, it's really important that you do some really deep soul searching work before you start to decide what it is best for you. Because if you're going to work from the outside and your environment outside, then you're going to make flash decisions that are not going to be well-rounded and well thought out. So in anything you do, as far as I'm concerned, when you are in your midlife years, you have to start from within, and you have to get to know who you are as a woman. Because if you don't know who you are and what your soul truth is all about, then your decisions are going to be continually bouncing you around, and you're going to feel like you are not grounded. And your family unit grounded you. Now you're not grounded. So now it's your time and your chance to get grounded again by stepping in and figuring yourself out, because you're in there, but you haven't been allowed to be yourself. I mean, I ask women all the time, when's the last time you recall being Denise? When's the last time you recall really, really Denise? Not the mom, not the grandma, not the wife, not the sister, daughter-in-law, whatever. Mom. Who is Denise? And when's the last time you recall being just you? And that makes people sit and ponder quite a while. Yeah.
That's definitely, yeah, that's a deep question to have to ponder. Now, the one thing just about a lot of what you've said, I feel like a lot of the advice that we get, like, I guess mainstream advice, is really counterintuitive. Now, I mentioned that first 2 years not having children is a contributing factor to a lot of divorces. And one of the things I remember when we first got married, people said, a lot of people were telling me, is don't have any kids in the first few years, get to know each other. So, that's that flies in the face of statistics. Also, in that last portion, after the kids leave the home and you start to have those challenges as a couple, the other thing that you see is, with all the dating apps and things like that, it's very easy for people to embrace the idea of starting over, even later in life. So it's kind of interesting that the advice that we're getting from a lot of people is really, if we looked at the statistics, it really goes contrary to that.
Mm-hmm. And my question would be, how successful is it? Right? Mm-hmm. If people are just trying to find, what is it what are we trying to find, right? And if you're looking for the magic bullet, there isn't one. It's all within yourself. You'll know you have guidance within you that you haven't tapped into. So to go out and find the answer is not going to fulfill you. The best way you can fulfill yourself is by looking deep within.
So I'm 38 and Brian's 39. So I'm thinking 20 years from now, if we were sitting in front of you and saying, we don't want a divorce, like that's not it as empty nesters, but our goals and visions and of how we see ourselves are not lining up anymore. How do you refocus that as, in your mid 50s, 60s, right?
What do you mean by aligning? What are you thinking about specifically?
So I'm thinking, somebody, okay, let's say this 38, 39, when we talk about years down the road, we say, certain things right now, but how about if that changes and Brian's like, oh, I want to go and travel the world, sell our houses. And I'm like, no, I want to stay and help take care of the grandkids, right? Like, so it's not a matter of we would be separating. It's just, how do we get back into that on the same path, on the same page, right, at that age of our lives?
And it's interesting that you say that, because I mean, now if you're talking like distance and stuff like that, there'd be more to conversation around it,
sure.
obviously. And I may know this is all hypothetical. We all
Yes.
know that,
Yeah.
but I understand what you're getting at. I think what's really important is no matter what happens, you have to know what it is best for you. But you can't just say, oh, I just want to go do this now. You have to have a deeper understanding as to why
Mm-hmm.
you are having that feeling. What is really going on there, right? Because again, what you're saying is, to me, outward stuff. I want to travel. I want to be with the grandchildren, right? Why do you want to be with the grandchildren? Why do you feel like you want to travel? Like, what is it that you think you're going to get out of that? What is it you think you need from the grandchildren, right? So deeper, more attuned questions as to why you are feeling those things, right? And it won't happen overnight, right? And if it does happen overnight, that's something else to look at, right? So what's going on there if it's going to happen overnight? My husband and I, we do a lot of, he goes his way, I go my way. We have no problems. We're doing great. And he goes down to the basement because his love and joy is woodworking. That's his passion. I hate it. I hate the dust in the house, for God's sake. I hate it. Whatever. It makes him happy. I'm up here talking with you. That brings me joy. We're not interfering with each other. That's not aligned, right? I don't help him with the saws and he doesn't help me with this conversation, but it doesn't mean we have to do everything together. Our goals are still the same. We still have our big goals are still the same. That's in alignment. But now I'm into doing stuff that I want to do for me. And he's fully supportive of that, as I am of him. So I don't know if that answers your question.
And I think that's also so important for our current ages of 38, 39, knowing that just because you don't need to do everything together, right? Like if you have couples who are comfortable right now at this stage of life, being able to do their own thing and come back and, still having those similar goals and stuff, I'm pretty sure that's going to lead to some really good, healthy relationships down the line when you're retired and now you're stuck with each other 24/7, right?
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, we've been together, counting our marriage and our time dating, over 15 years. And I think we figured out we don't like all of the exact same things.
Yeah. And we like our time apart, and we know that that's healthy and it doesn't mean anything less. Right. And I think that it's just feeling confident in what it is you're into.
And I promise we won't wait 20 years to have that conversation, just that hypothetical. So I think we'll manage.
And you know what? When it needs to surface, it will surface.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to do what it's going to do. And it's just what you decide to do when it surfaces, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No.
Okay. So can we actually talk a little bit more about the adult children and parent relationship? I just was thinking, so when I was preparing for this, my thought was, okay, I guess that relationship started when I left for college, right? Where it turned from now my parents literally parenting and guiding and, comes the discipline and all that kind of stuff, right? That we're currently in. And then it was the crossover was going to college. So then it turned into more that friendship relationship where, really there couldn't be, there's like the discipline sort of goes out the door and stuff like that. Right. Mm-hmm. So when you have ladies come to you, like, how would you like guide them in that transition?
Well, great question, because there's no one formula fits all,
mm-hmm.
right? There are so many factors that play. And sometimes it's the children's attachment and need to get the support and the constant reassurance from mom. But also what I do know is, there's parenting styles, right? So what types of parenting styles you might have used when your children were growing up. Some of them are like, if they're helicopter, let's say, like always there, always out, right? Mm-hmm. Always there. So you train your child to be dependent on you because so then that's a really tough transition for the kids. And then it becomes, extra tricky for the mom if they don't want to keep doing that because they're getting exhausted, right? So it really is dependent on the individual case, because there's other things that interfere with it too, right? It could be, depends on the situation in terms of, like, I'm thinking of even when my kids would call me when they were, again, first off into college, university, and I remember the phone calls. Mom, I'm not feeling well. Can you call the doctor? I'm fine. I don't need a doctor, right? Like, well, I've never called the doctor before. Well, I guess there's a first time for everything,
Yep.
right? And that was one of those, what the hell did I do? I set up everything for everybody, right?
Oh, man.
Oh, well, but we adapted, right? It was like, well, there it was, right in my face. I was the organizer. That's what I did. That's who I was. Everybody had its, looked after everything. But it wasn't a big deal to resolve it. It just took a couple calls like that. Now, I have great relationships with my kids, but that's taken work, right? It doesn't just happen overnight. And like I've said, the more I'm comfortable with who I am and what I'm about, then the relationship just builds from that. And that can be true for the adult children as well, right? It doesn't just have to come from the mom. Those are the people that I work with, but the adult children are going to learn and grow through their friends, through their work, through their studies, through their learnings too, right? So there's all kinds of techniques and strategies, but one of the things that I think is really, really key is communication. And that's always been in my toolbox of strategies. And how you deliver the communication is really important, right? You have to be really aware of how you're feeling before it comes out your mouth, right? So,
or even I'm thinking like, so I have two brothers, so I enjoy a good phone conversation if I have time. Usually I call my mom when I'm driving somewhere, right? Because I know I don't have the kids and I can get a few minutes in, uninterrupted, where my brothers are more the texts back and forth, right? They'll go back and forth, but just knowing how that communication is going to be, best given out, I guess, right?
Yeah. Well, and best for the person giving it, right? How that looks. But when you get into situations that are more complex, texting isn't gonna, because there's too many things that can interfere with that, right?
Yes.
Right.
So where and if you can have, and that's part of the issue too with COVID, is you can't have conversations the way you used to be able to. So I always worry about what that's going to do long term, right? We're going to have to figure out some pieces around that too. But yeah, knowing when you have a need to communicate and how that's going to come out and what that's going to end up, what is your goal for the conversation, right? What is it you need to share and why do you need to share that, right?
Now, you really got me thinking about, being an adult child who left home. And, thinking back to my experience, there was a lot more at play. I moved out. Part of the reason why I moved out was because at the time my parents were also getting a divorce. So our family unit, we were moving. So there was a lot at play. But when I think back on it, I feel like my dad had a lot easier time with it than my mom did. It was a much easier transition for him as far as communication and, me maybe not calling him for months at a time. And then I'd call him and we just picked up where we left off. And my mom had a much more difficult time with that. Is that something that you see commonly as well? And obviously you speak to the female perspective more than the men, but is that something that you see a lot of?
Well, it is, because the moms, they've given so much, and it's not that dads don't give, it's just different, right? Just like you said, dad can pick up where we left off and we're both good, right? I don't know if you have a sister, but if you did have a sister, that she might tell you something very different from her perspective. So I don't know if you have a sister or not, but you might want to check with her and say, hey, I'm curious. But yeah, I mean, if it's a traditional household, the moms are the ones doing, I mean, no matter how many years we've said women don't always have to do the cooking and cleaning and all the, making the lunches and all the Band-Aids on the knees from, again, not saying that that has to be the way it is, but there's just a higher propensity for women to give their hearts differently than men. Not that they don't both give hearts and love to their kids, because they do. It just goes out differently. And it's interesting. I do know more men are talking about that transition and how hard it is on them, but you can't show that it's tough on you, right? It's still that 19 whatever 1800s, I don't know. Like, come on, people, get with it, right? Let's So I mean, the reality is it is hard, there's no doubt about it, and women struggle with it and they don't want to talk about it because it makes them look weak, right? It makes them look like, oh, you're spoiling your kids, or you're too engaged, give them a break, whatever, right? So they have to it's a tough go for women, and it will be for a while, I think, until the open conversations start happening more, but I think that's a while coming too. Yeah.
So, my question to you is, what do your clients say are their biggest struggles, worries, and fears they're experiencing in their new role as middle-aged women?
They don't want to lose their children. That's one of the biggest ones I hear. They're afraid their relationship is going to get taken over by another significant other. Not that they don't want them to be happy, not that they don't want them to be fulfilled with a spouse or partner, but it's just a loss for them. It's like a loss.
Mhm.
That's probably one of the biggest things that I hear. And that's why I think I hear a lot of can't wait for the grandchildren, right? Because you're done. Give me an ex crew, right? Yeah. I would say that's the biggest thing that I hear. Sometimes I hear regret. Sometimes I hear, things didn't work out and it's my fault. My child is, has trouble. They're addicted. They've got issues. They've got whatever. It's something that I have done, and so they carry that burden. And more than likely, not necessarily for the right reasons. Like, and those are the types of things I help with too, right? Just helping them see they're adults and they make choices now too. And you don't have responsibility now that they are needing to take responsibility for themselves. And sometimes that's the work I do too, is helping them help their children take responsibility for who they are by stepping back and fulfilling themselves in different ways so that they can see how worthy they are as a woman. And that helps change perspective huge too.
I can see the benefit in that because obviously, as a parent, looking down the line when our children become adults, and God forbid they run into, stuff,
Yeah.
big stuff, right? You want
Yeah.
to be there, but then also knowing that, like you said, they're adults, they're going to make their own decisions. So I guess it's like learning when it is you have to step back, right?
Yeah.
Whether it be their relationship maybe break down or just different things that are going to come up.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I could see that definitely being a
Yeah.
benefit, having someone like you there to walk them
Mhm.
through that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Because I think what happens a lot of times is what I call faulty thinking, right? They attach the behaviors, they attach the results of somebody else to them. So it's something that they have faltered in. And it's like, mm, let's step back and see what you own and what is your responsibility. And when we get through all the muck and the guck, it's amazing what comes out. Yeah. Yeah. It's very powerful.
Hmm.
And again, everybody grows through the experience because mom starts changing because she knows what she really wants to do in life and what she wants to support, what she can support, and where she has to put up, like we talked before, those boundaries and say, I'm here for support, but I'm not here to fix it. I'm not here to, I remember hearing on the radio, on CBC radio, my heart would be broken. I would hear of parents who would take on mortgages and the kids would be in the house not getting a job and everything was looked after and they just get the mortgage paid. Mom and dad, And I'd be like, tell me that's not really happening. And it really was. And it probably still is. And I'm like, okay, doesn't have to be like that. Right. Yeah. Right. It's just amazing to me. And what does that all stem from? Right. So there's opportunity for growth and change for everybody in a process, for sure. And everybody wins at the end of the day. Yeah. Because enabling is not beneficial for anybody.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. I'm like, that's all enabling, and that just turns into a disaster,
Oh,
right? As time goes on, because if that's where they are as adults, then it's happened their whole life, right? So,
yeah.
For people like that, they don't know any different.
Yeah. Exactly. But you know what? I believe wholeheartedly things can change. People can change at any stage of life. Oh, I've seen it. And it's just, well, I could go into tears because the transformations that I've seen in the women I work with are just unbelievable.
I think that's so big. So just being there to support, but not fixing, right?
Absolutely. And no matter how much it breaks your heart, right? But if you go in and do the fixing, that's not going to change anything except more burden on you, and nobody wins. Yeah.
Right. And the more and more we have these conversations, the one thing that kind of sticks out for me a lot is there's so many principles that apply to both, because parenting at the end of the day is leadership. So there's a lot of things that can apply to both your career and to your family. And it's the same idea in the workplace. If you start doing the job for one of your employees, you're going to end up always doing it. It's the same as, it sounds like it's the same as a parent. If you take on that responsibility for your child, they're not going to take it on. It's going to be your responsibility unless you find a way to snap them out of that.
Interesting you say that, because I know you guys had Barbara Coloroso on not that long ago. Love her. Oh, I love her. Anyway, one of the things she used to talk about was let them make the mistakes when they're younger. Let them fix that mistake as they do it. And even if it's not going to sit right with you, right? There's a lot of power to give it to them, but then you've got to have a lot of control to not step in and do it the way you want to see it done, right? So if you start doing that when the kids are little and practice that, that's going to hold you in good stead as they get older, for sure, because they're going to screw up. Tell me, they're human. Yeah. We all do, right? Yeah. We all do. That's the learning, right? But not to step in and circumvent. That's not going to help, right? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I'm just thinking of that now because our eldest is 12, our youngest is 4. And yeah, you'd rather make those mistakes and learn from them at 4 years old than 34 or 44.
Right. And the interesting part that I always found really tough as a mom of young kids, and watching it even in school, like all over, the younger they are, the more you feel like you can give them that autonomy because you're always there. But the older they get, the more risky they get, the harder it is for you to go, they're gonna, right? It's like,
It's true.
Help me stop him. Help me not stop him. And he's gonna live, but it's not his best decision.
Yeah, that's the hard part.
Right.
So for the ladies that you speak to, do you ever recommend that they have a conversation with their son or daughter and maybe their spouse about like how they want to see the relationship as mom and child?
That's a great question too. Again, I don't say what they need to do. What I do is I work with what they need.
They've done.
Right. And then what they decide comes from their heart, their soul, their knowing of who they are. So it's not like I have strategies and techniques. Okay, you need to go out and do this with this, family member and do this with this. We look at what's going on and what they need and what makes sense and why does it make sense. And so what would your next step be? And what do you think is going to roll out from that? And what's what's the positive that can happen from that, and what's the negative that can happen from that, and then what's best for you. Why is that best for you, right? So there's all kinds of work to be done in behind the scenes. And then I'm always there, depending on how long, but I'm always there to support them through any process, right? Because really the work that I do is work with them, and then they take the work that I do with them, and they change, they do what they need to do, and I'd support from the side, but it's the work that I do with the women specifically. Yeah.
Right. And I think just given your career as well, prior to getting into the coaching, I think you can appreciate this, the old saying that's basically, when you teach someone, you learn twice. So I'm curious, what are some of the things that you've learned from this coaching process from your clients?
Oh, where do I begin? What's our timeline? No. You know what? Probably one of the biggest things that I have learned is that the power that everybody has, and they don't use it. They don't even know what they're capable of. And I'm talking like heart, mind, soul connection. I'm not talking like strength working out. I'm talking the ability to align themselves with a deeper understanding of who they really are. And when that happens, like it's beyond me how it all folds together. Like, and they teach me stuff. Like, I go through a questionnaire when I do my one-on-one coaching. I go through a questionnaire. I think it's about 30 questions. And then I give a sheet back explaining what they said their goals were for the time we're working together. And then we create a plan of action to start right off the hop. And then they meet with me once a week. Where these women start with me is that environmental piece that we talked about at the beginning, right? The outside world. I want to change this. I want to change that. I want, I think I want to go and try this, but I'm not sure, kind of thing. Or my relationship with my children isn't really good and I want to fix that, right? So within the first 2 to 3 weeks, I'm already seeing things happen with the women that I work with that change me, because I think my human brain thinks, okay, I think I can get them this far. But when we do the work that we do together, what happens is, I'm not going to say a miracle, but there are days where I think, holy cow, where did that come from? Like, and the confidence and the calmness, right? When I have a lot of women who work with me who are really high anxiety, like stressed out because things aren't the way they used to be, all in a nice little package, right? And so just even their presence over the screen, I can tell their shoulders have dropped, and like, it's just amazing. And this comes from them really wanting something different in their lives, whatever that may be. Could be the relationships with their children, could be their marriage stuff, it could be I'm looking for something and I don't know what it is. Like, it's all over the place. It's midlife transitions is everything, like it seems. But the shifts that happen and just the stress that's gone, it's enlightening. It's just so powerful. It just makes me it's what drives me to keep doing this work, Yeah, trying to reach more women, because the power in it has been amazing. And I learn stuff from them every week. Every week I'm learning something new from somebody. Yeah.
And for them to know that it was all within, they just needed that extra, help to pull it out, and just to look at things differently, right?
Absolutely. 100%. Absolutely. Yeah. It's something that you can almost not even understand until you go through the process, how the power can shift very quickly. And there was one lady that I thought, oh, are we going to be able to make gains within and she's re-enlisted with me. Like, she's renewed her contract with me, because she said, I'm not done yet. I didn't think she was either, but the way she's been able to make life changes for herself, and she's been working at this for 30 years. And she's been working with me for 14 weeks now. Yeah.
Wow.
Just yeah, I'm like, okay, I'm here for you. Let's do whatever we're going to do. You tell me, it's pretty neat.
I'm curious now, and this might be difficult to answer, but in terms of, going through that experience with somebody and seeing them make a transition, especially in such a short time working with you, do you find that more rewarding, or going back to maybe your teaching career and seeing a student over time? Yeah, I figured that would be a tough one.
I've got some incredible stories of some incredible students. You know what? Any individual, if I can help them in any way, shape, or form, they're going to impact me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say, I mean, my heart feels somewhat sad that I can't help people before midlife. I mean, I can, and I did, but you know what I mean? But I think everybody has to go through these types of transitions in order to really get to the deep stuff that's more important, right? So I think everybody's got their life trajectory and things are going to happen in the way they need to happen for them. So I would say it's very hard for me to answer that question. If I can help one person, which I have, I've done my job. And by helping them, they always help me.
All right. Well, I think eventually you're going to run into the situation where someone you helped as a student is going to be someone you help as a coach. And then when that happens, we have to have you back on.
Okay.
And I was thinking of Brian's sport analogy of a win is a win, right? So right? You take it for what it is.
Totally.
Oh, man. I just thought of something else. We're not going to get into it, but I'm going to put it out there. So what happens when your parent starts dating again? That's another topic, I guess, eh?
Tell me more. What's the issue? What's going down?
No, I'm just thinking, like, as adult children, what happens if parents separate, divorce, and now moving on into that relationship changes as well, right? Because parents aren't there as easy or often as it once was to watch kids and stuff like that. Like, I've even heard many stories of when I was working at CS, I had a client. He was like, my parents were going to be our babysitters, or sorry, my mom was going to be the babysitter. Mm-hmm. And she met somebody and they got married and they're leaving and I need daycare. Can you help me find daycare? And I was like, oh, like that just throws a whole wrench. You want, obviously, your parents to be happy, but it's just, well, now it's almost like that role reversal, right?
Yeah, it is. And interestingly enough, understand that has happened. But what would happen if you had private childcare and that lady couldn't do childcare anymore? Like, right? But because it's a parent, mm-hmm. there's that extra cog in the wheel, right? So totally understand that. But then you go back to, okay, wait a minute. What was the relationship like growing up? What do we need to look at? What's going on for you, right? As the parent of the grandchild who was supposed to get care, right? Like, so yeah, I'd be interested in finding out more how I could help and support if that mom needed help. Not just for the childcare, but what were they really going through? Was it not about the childcare? Probably it was more along the lines of, oh, mom's gonna what? Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, that role reversal.
Right? Yeah, huge. Yeah, which means there's more work for that person to go through too, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow.
Now, is there anything that we can look forward to that you're working on? I didn't have a chance to look at it. Tanya kind of got me up to speed. She did all the research for this, but I know you have your website and your blog. So can you talk to us a bit about the work that you're doing and where people can find you?
Absolutely, thank you. I've got a few spots where I'm hanging out. I'm my first love is Instagram. I'll be honest with you. I know people are like, you're in your midlife years, you're on Insta. I even did a reel once too. I'll have you know.
You're better than me.
I haven't done a reel
I,
either,
I,
so kudos.
oh, geez, I've got so much work to do, ladies and gentlemen. But yes, you can find me on Instagram, Denise Drinkwalter. It's Drinkwalter with an L. And my website is the same. You can find me under Denise Drinkwalter, life coach. I mentioned earlier, I did a course and I'm in the DBR community, which is Divorced by Rose. It's an app for people who are contemplating divorce and or separation. And I wrote a course specific for women in their midlife years 50 plus who are contemplating separation or divorce. So go and check that out. It's a very powerful app. You can go in and totally be anonymous and it's super cool. So that would be really neat to have you go in and check out that, because you can pay for just that course if that's what you want to explore. I also have created and going to be launched on the 16th of May. It's an 8-week course and it's called Cut the Cord, Not the Ties. And so it's a course to help women, moms who are in their midlife years who have adult children. And we're going to go through a number of strategies and talk about a lot of different things and what's going on. It's going to be weekly sessions. It's going to be a private community, a group for anybody who joins the course. And you get a one-on-one coaching session with me whenever works best for you. So you get that as a gratis on top of the 8 weeks course, going through all the aspects of, what are your triggers? What was your environment like? How does that impact how you parented? Where are you now? What are the pros and cons? What are you struggling with? What's the biggest worry? What's your biggest fear? And stepping more into learning about yourself, starting that process. So it's going to be a really well encompassing course and I'm really excited about and can't wait to get it off the ground and start it up. And it'll be open and probably till the first week of June. So, and then I always have one-on-one coaching. I have 2 options in the one-on-one coaching. I have a 12-week program, which seems to never be long enough. So I'm thinking about whether I should change that to go a bit longer. But I do have a one-on-one coaching program for 12 weeks. And then I also have monthly. If you just want to do a month at a time, you're welcome to sign up for a month. Have to make sure that you're a match and we have a conversation. We don't sign you up if it's not a right fit for you. So I get to meet you and talk with you about what it is you're worried about, what's going on, and see if I can help before we jump into anything. So yeah, those are the things that I offer. I also do numerology. I'm actually a certified numerologist. So I do that on the side too. So if anybody, you don't have to be a midlife woman to have that done. So if you're interested in your sign at all, or your destiny, your gift, your path, message me and we can get you. I do a reading and then I do a half-hour conference call on how you can take the information that is best suited for you to jump in and start making changes. What's the best bang for your buck? Where should you start? So that's another piece that I do on the side.
Great. Well, very busy. So they say your life is busier once you're retired. And I guess that's true for you.
You know what? It's what I love to do. So I don't find it hard, busy, or, stressful at all. I just love it. So I have nothing but energy for it. So I love it. Yeah. But this has been wonderful. You guys are amazing. I absolutely love your energy.
Thanks.
And I can't wait to meet you when you're 50.
I know. I was like, oh, we're going to have to keep her number.
I love it. You can reach out anytime. You don't have to be 50. I can do your numerology report and tell you where you need to start.
Oh, man. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Denise, for being on with us.
Real pleasure. Take care, guys.
Thanks for listening to the Disrupt the Everyday podcast. For more ways to listen, connect with us on social media. To be a guest or to partner with us, check out our link tree at Disrupt the Everyday. Join us next time for more ways to disrupt the everyday.
Behaviour